Welcome to Salisbury University on the Air, a program highlighting the activities and the people of the campus. My name is Susan Purnell. For more than 65 years, the late Victor Laws was a prominent leader in the Eastern Shore's legal community. Now, thanks to his generosity, Salisbury University students studying to become attorneys have a new resource to help pay for their education. Here to discuss the gift that made the new Victor H. Laws Jr. Scholarship possible are Mr. Laws' son, Vic Laws III, and Jason Curtin, SU Vice President of Advancement and External Affairs and Executive Director of the Salisbury University Foundation. First is Vic. So welcome back, Vic.
Thank you.
Last time we talked, just a couple months ago, we talked about a real generous gift from the Richard Henson Foundation. You're the chair of that, right?
I was at the time.
Okay.
We do a 2-year rotation.
Okay. And now you're here to talk about one that's even closer to home from your dad,
Right.
Mr. Laws. And it's so exciting. You didn't even know about it, did you?
I can't remember him really talking about the specific things. I knew he was going to do some charitable gifts in his will, but I didn't know exactly what he was going to do. But I was real tickled when I heard about this one.
Yeah. What do you think made him?
I think SU has always been dear to his heart because he kind of got his start here. His
Right.
sister was educated here and became a longtime teacher and educator. And he was here in the first formative years of the university. He was here in the first decade, which I think is kind of exciting.
Yeah.
So it had a lot to do with launching his legal career, and so I think he wanted to kind of pay that back.
So when I said you didn't know about it, it's because it was a planned gift in his will, correct?
Well, he was, like a lot of people, private about what he was planning to do. He wrote his own will without any consultation with me.
He's a lawyer.
Yeah, right.
He knows
And he was
how.
entitled to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I didn't want to pry, you know. So he told me what he wanted to tell me, and he didn't tell me what he wanted to keep private.
Right.
And so I really didn't know in detail what he was planning to do.
Yeah, but I know you're thrilled about this. And
Yeah.
And how much was the gift?
It's $250,000 minimum. It's going to turn out to be a little bit more than that because there was a formula in his will. He wanted a certain amount of his estate to go to charity, so it's going to work out to be a little higher than $250,000 into this endowment fund.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
His going into the legal field was based on a conversation that he had with somebody here at SU. Is that right?
Yeah, there was a dean here named Dean Carruthers. Thomas Jefferson Carruthers was his full name, actually, and he was a dean here and a professor of philosophy, I think. He taught Dad, and he was also an advisor for there was a debate that they put on, and it was judged by a local judge, and Dad did real well in that. It had to do with FDR's court packing plan in the late 30s. And even though the judge said that he didn't agree with Dad's position, he thought that he argued it very effectively, and that was one of the things that I think got Dad started thinking about the legal profession.
How did he get his start as an attorney?
He did a year or two at College Park and then transferred to the University of Maryland. Again, I don't think he got a degree at College Park at the time because they had a combined, I think if you went 6 years or something, you could get your law degree, which was an LLB at the time, and maybe get your bachelor's at the same ceremony. And I think that's what he did.
And he practiced up there in Baltimore for a while.
He did for a while. He finished in 41, which the war clouds were very visible. We hadn't had Pearl Harbor hadn't happened yet. That was in December of 41. So when Dad graduated law school in May of 41, people knew that the war was kind of looming. Things weren't going well in Europe. The Japanese were very aggressive in the Pacific and so forth. Dad always said that they passed his whole law school class. There was a 100% passage rate on the bar that year, and Dad thought that the bar examiners were taking pity on all these young lawyers because they figured the war was going to weed them out anyway. That's what he always said.
Oh, that was his excuse for passing.
That's what he said.
Right,
that's why he thought
right.
everybody passed.
So altogether, so I know he was in Baltimore and then moved down to Salisbury. How many years did he practice law?
It's kind of an amazing record, really, because he stopped practicing in 1991 pretty much, and he was 92 years old at that time. And that was 70 years out of law school. I mean, he missed a few with the war years, but there aren't too many people around who practice for 70 years.
So he did go to war.
Oh yeah.
I didn't realize
Not
that.
initially, but you know, he went out of law school, he came back and he clerked for Judge Bailey here for a time. And he had a deferment with some kind of physical issue initially, but as the war dragged on, they started taking people who hadn't passed the physicals initially. They lowered the standards a little bit because they needed more people, you know, in the service. And actually, I think General Woodcock saw Dad on the street with his mother one Saturday shopping in downtown Salisbury. And he said, "Young man, why aren't you in uniform?" And he said, "Well, I forget what it was, flat feet or something."
That's what my dad got out with.
Yeah, he had some kind of deferment for
Yeah.
something like that. And he said, "Well, young man, you're going back to see Dr. So-and-so on Monday morning and, you know, have another evaluation." And this time he passed, and they took him in the service, and he spent the rest of the war years through August of 1945 in the service in France in the Signal Corps. He had some interesting stories from that era.
I bet from that era and from 70 years as a lawyer.
Yeah.
He wrote a book.
Yeah,
as
he
a
wrote
matter
a
of
book,
fact.
but it's more about family life in this area back in those days because his mother's generation, his dad was raised on a farm and he didn't like farming. Spent a lot of time reading, read the encyclopedia reportedly from cover to cover.
Oh my
and
gosh.
That was one reason that he, you know, had such a breadth of knowledge. Well, one of the things was when he was working in Baltimore, he worked for Clarence Miles's firm, and Clarence Miles was the guy who spearheaded the effort to bring the Baltimore Orioles to town from St. Louis. Baltimore wanted a Major League Baseball team, and St. Louis's Browns weren't competing with the Cardinals, which was the town's favorite team. They sent Dad out to St. Louis to pick up all the excess shares of stock. The Browns were publicly held, and so there were these other shareholders out there. And Dad's job was to go find widows and orphans out in St. Louis who would part with their shares of the St. Louis Browns. He was knocking on doors
You're
in
kidding.
row houses because there was a department store there that used to give a share of stock of the Browns with each purchase, if you can believe that. And so,
Wow.
can you imagine going to
No.
Hutzler's in the old day and getting
Yeah.
a share of the Orioles along with your,
Unbelievable.
you know,
So
coat?
he had to purchase it back.
Yeah. So he had, you know, authority to purchase these shares of stock back. So we always like to say that he had a minor role in bringing the Orioles to Baltimore.
That's neat. Beyond the Eastern Shore, where he practiced law most of his life,
Right.
he was also involved in some Maryland organizations, the Maryland Bar Association, of course, and also, and I don't know anything about this, the Maryland Court of Appeals Client Protection Fund.
At the time Dad was put on there, it was called the Client Security Trust Fund, and then they gave it this Client Protection Fund name a little bit later. But either way, the essence of it is, unfortunately, there's a certain small percentage of attorneys who aren't scrupulous. And they might have gotten disbarred for some reason. They might have defrauded their own clients. And basically, this organization Dad was head of, he worked on it for 17 years and he was chairman for, I think, 14 of those years. They collect assessments from all the other lawyers all the lawyers in the state have to pay into it. And then they decide, you know, whether they have a worthy case that their lawyer did them wrong, and they reimburse them.
Oh.
And so they hear these claims, and they administer this fund of money and pay back people whose lawyers have, you know, defrauded them or, you know, misrepresented them in some way.
That's really great. He started that?
He didn't start it, but he was
worked
certainly
on it.
one of the leaders
Yeah.
and worked on it for a long time, a time which saw a big surge in the number of lawyers and unfortunately the number of claims made against
And
lawyers
still there
by
today.
a client. Yeah, it's still there today.
I'd never heard of it. That's very interesting and great.
It's a great public
Yeah.
service that people don't know much about unless they have the unfortunate situation, you know, arise where their attorney squanders their money or disappears with their money.
It's happened here in Salisbury, from what I understand. So
Yeah.
it does happen everywhere. Your father also was a big force in local politics.
One of the first things he did was he was on the Democratic State Central Committee in the early 60s, and he was really active in Frank Morris's campaign to be mayor of Salisbury, and then Dad became city solicitor during the Morris years.
I didn't know that.
And that was kind of a time like what Jake Day is trying to do now, I think. A little bit of a more activist city government, trying to get things done and move the town forward. In the early 60s, a lot of that took the form of condemning old buildings, urban development, you know, urban revitalization and urban renewal. So Dad tried a lot of condemnation cases for the city where the city was taking dilapidated properties and trying to turn them into productive properties, especially in the downtown area. I think that spurred his interest in politics.
Then he went on to the county council for at least 20 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was 16
Okay.
16 years, 4 terms or something like that. And he had, in the mid-70s, he went on the county council for the first time and was very interested in helping the volunteer fire companies fulfill their responsibility. So he, I think, spearheaded the idea of county appropriations to the volunteer fire companies. He was a big supporter of initially the charter form of government because the county didn't have home rule. So in the early 60s, that was a big emphasis, and he was very supportive of that. Then he became a big advocate. In fact, he started this on his first county council run of the county executive form of government. I remember he ran newspaper ads touting the idea, promoting the idea
Which we now
of
have.
county executive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it took 20 years or more, but eventually that came to pass. The voters approved that, and
Would
we
you
had
say that's his most notable accomplishment after
Probably.
16 years or so?
Yeah, I would say probably.
Yeah.
But I mean, he wasn't the only person who led that charge. I guess nobody can do anything alone. But he was certainly an early advocate of that, and probably helped kick that off. So I think he was proud to see that came to fruition. Yeah. I still hear from people who were in county government during his years. People like Marvin Long, who was a department head for a long time, would come up to me and tell me how much he appreciated the way Dad ran meetings, that he would listen to the county departments, that he ran it in a very orderly fashion. It was a very bipartisan era. You had people like Lewis Riley, who were Republican, and Dad, who was Democrat, all working together.
They were civilized.
It was a very, cooperative and civilized approach. People were looking out for the best interest of the county, not for their political party.
And they were gentlemen. I mean, I think of your dad and Lou Riley, just good souls and sweet men.
Yeah.
maybe. Also, he was notable for his forays into the real estate industry. And tell us a little bit about, I know both in Wicomico and Worcester County had some projects going on.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, some of it was personal, some of it was professional. He had a professional interest in this, and sometimes a little bit of both. Like, I think he had a small financial interest in some of the Ocean City condos, but he helped Jim English develop English Towers and the Century One project, for instance, and he worked with other developers on documenting and getting the approval process of some of the big Ocean City projects. He worked with Oscar Carey on some Ocean City developments, and one of the major cases that deals with dredging and filling of land was something that he worked on in the 60s and 70s. It's easy to forget how that was at the time. Jim Kane was bringing truckload after truckload of dirt and creating new land in Ocean City to be built on. That was very prevalent in the early 70s, and Dad had some test cases involving that. But locally, it's almost kind of a tradition in our family, I guess, to try to develop the area locally. If you go to Truett Street, that's named for my grandmother's side of the family in Salisbury, a very old part of town. Victor Drive in the Pinehurst area, that was also my grandmother developed that street, named for my grandfather. But Dad kind of carried on that tradition with some downtown office buildings. He had a great aunt who had the land which became the Giant Shopping Center and the Montgomery Ward's Shopping Center. Currently there's Acme and I've forgotten what's on the other side, World Gym. Or
Used to be.
Used to be
I think
World
there's nothing
Gym.
right now in that building. Actually, I think PRMC bought that building.
Oh,
or
okay.
leased that building.
Yeah. So Dad had a hand in things like that. More recently, the Riverside Pines development
Right.
south of Salisbury, and there's a development
You mean
even
where his
further.
house was?
Yeah, where his house
Riverside
was.
Pines Court? Because there
Yeah.
was nothing there when we were growing up.
Right. It was called the
Yeah.
Hidden Desert, wasn't it?
Right,
We used
it
to
was.
we used
Yeah.
to play there.
Yes, we would go walking through the woods there.
You'd look for Indian arrowheads,
Yes.
and I think that land was
It was
actually
completely
dredged.
undeveloped. You're right.
A lot of it was spoil from the river, from the river dredging. He and some partners developed the Ocean Resorts Golf Club over in the Ocean Pines area, which was later donated to Warwick Community College. So Dad had a hand in a lot of little
He did.
things around the area that people may not know about.
And I know he was recognized with several awards during his life. What do you think were the most meaningful ones to him?
You know, it's funny. He was so modest. I remember he got the Chamber Award one year, and I've forgotten when that was. I remember Chip DeShiel was MC, and Dad was fond of Chip, and he appreciated Chip being presented it. I arranged for my aunt, who just died this year at 106.
106? That's
Yeah.
Maud, right?
And that was my Aunt Margaret.
Margaret.
Yeah. But anyway, arranged for her to be there for this special night for my father. And he's so modest. He had no inkling this was coming, even though it's like, why am I being asked to a chamber dinner? I don't usually go to a chamber dinner. Why is my sister being asked to be here? And some of my family members. It didn't dawn on him.
It never occurred.
It never occurred to him until Chip had it out of his mouth that this year's Chamber Award is Victor H. Laws. Then it finally clicked, and it's like, oh, I'm being recognized here tonight. I mean, that's how, you
Yeah.
know, he never really sought the limelight. He did things for the right reasons because he thought that the community, would be better. He got a very nice award in 2011 from an outfit called the Maryland Bar Foundation. This is a statewide organization that recognizes lawyers for their state contributions, and this was for something called Advancement of Public Service Responsibility. So that was a very nice award. But again, he didn't really seek out those kind of things. He liked to kind of stay out of the spotlight a little bit.
No, he certainly didn't. And he was a very humble man, but such a wise one, because I just used to love just listen to him talk. We're here to discuss his gift to SU, but he was
Right.
also a philanthropist in so many other ways. What do you think were his major causes, the organizations that he supported the most?
Well, there are quite a few. I mean, I
Sure.
mentioned the gift to Warwick Community College. He's got a major gift to the Community Foundation. In addition to his will, during his lifetime, he did something called a Charitable Remainder Trust, or CRT, and that benefits both the University of Maryland Law School, where not only he, but Jean and I and our daughter Jessie are all graduates. So
Yeah.
we have 3 generations there now. We're really proud of that.
Yeah.
He made valuable gifts in the early going of the Salvation Army that helped to enable the Hazel, the West Side Youth Center, to get on, to get off the ground. That and his church, the Old School Baptist Church, originally the one in downtown Salisbury, and more recently the Forest Grove Old School Baptist Church. Those were all dear to his heart, and all are
It's a
going to
beautiful
receive very
church.
generous gifts from my father.
What do you think he would want his legacy to be?
He loved the community, and he was looking for things around the community, organizations that have made it better. And he tried to identify Salisbury University, Salvation Army, Warwick, the YMCA. I don't think I mentioned the YMCA. He made a valuable gift to the YMCA. They're doing a warm water pool
Right.
that they're adding, and doing a vast expansion of their physical facility over there on Shoemaker. He just wanted to contribute to a lot of different things like that are pillars of our community.
Well, I know I miss him, and I know the rest of our community does too, and you and your family. He just, with this gift to SU, he now ensures that other people can have the same law education that he had, and which is fantastic. And he will continue to touch through all of his gifts so many people in our community. We were just so lucky to have him.
Yeah, thank you.
And I know you know that. Great talking to you today. Thanks, Vic.
Thanks for having me.
And now let's look at what's happening in the campus in August. Up next is Jason Curtin to tell us a little bit about planned giving and how contributions to the university support SU's students and academic mission. Welcome, Jason. Always good to see you. Before we start talking a little bit about planned giving, which is I know why you're here, let's talk a little about you.
Sure.
You're also an alumnus of SU.
I am. I graduated in 1998 with a degree in communication arts and a minor in marketing, and
Wow.
never thought I would come back to the shore. But after graduation, I went to the University of South Carolina for graduate school, and then in 2004, I got a phone call from a mentor of mine, Dr. Carol Williamson, who used to be the Vice President of Student Affairs, and told me that the alumni director position was open. So I threw my name in the hat, and lo and behold, have been back since 2004.
And now you are SU's Vice President of, let me get this right, Advancement and External Affairs, as well as the Executive Director of the Foundation. A lot of people don't understand the difference between the university and the foundation. Can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, and it's sometimes we think in our heads it's pretty easy, but it is a little complex. So there's this relationship that exists between the foundation, which is its own 501c3 entity. The SU Foundation exists solely to support the university. It was established 40 plus years ago by three gentlemen. It's a way, sort of the fundraising arm and investment arm of the university. Since the university is a state agency, the foundation can solicit donations, collect them, and then also invest those for the future. So the two hats that I wear as vice president on the university side, I serve as a member of the president's cabinet and oversee everything from alumni relations to marketing and PR to the website, sports information. And then that position, the vice president, has a dual role as the executive director of the foundation. So they sort of mirror each other and they play well off each other, but keeps my day interesting.
You have a lot to do,
yeah.
That's for sure. And I love serving on the foundation with you. So
Excellent member. We have a great group of about 40 board members, and they love Salisbury University.
Well, it's because you feed us before the meeting.
True.
So let's get to the crux of the matter here today, planned giving.
Yep.
What exactly is it?
So planned giving is really just a process. Most people think a planned gift is something you do, but it's really a process. A planned gift is a process that a donor takes to make a major contribution either during their life or after they pass away. And so some planned gifts are pretty simple, like someone saying, I'm going to leave Salisbury University and the foundation a portion of my estate in my will, or they get
As did Mr. Laws.
As did Mr. Laws,
Right.
and just a simple little bequest statement, say I hereby leave X amount of money or X percentage of my estate to the university. Or some people make them complex, whether it's tax advantages or legal advantages, and they can set up trusts or charitable remainder trusts, charitable remainder unit trusts. Sometimes people do planned gifts for income producing. So some people do annuities with the university, like they'll give us money now, we'll invest it, and then we'll pay an annuity during their lifetime. And then when they pass, the foundation gets the residual. So they can be as fairly simple as a bequest, and then they can get pretty complex where you need a tax advisor or legal advice when you start setting up trusts.
So when you set up a planned gift in your will, what's the tax advantage to that?
Really, it's not necessarily a tax advantage. Obviously, there's lots of, and I'm not a tax consultant,
Right,
so I always
right.
advise donors to check with your tax consultant. There may be certain ways in the state with capital gains taxes or certain estate taxes happen. There may be advantages, but really, the benefit of a bequest is that most people want to support an organization like the university, but their cash flow may not be what it is, so they want to do something substantial. Most people, it sounds a little blunt, they don't really care what happens when they're gone. As long as they take care of their families, it's another great way to take care of organizations.
Right.
And so I think that's why bequests are the most common, is because it's sort of after the fact. You can take care, you can plan accordingly, but then you can also make a substantial gift to
That's
the university.
really true.
You know, when you look at your annual gifts, the gift that you can give, you sort of account for that, and you sort
Right.
of put that in part of your budget. Like I'm going to give X amount to this organization this year, or this much to my church, or this much to another entity. But those planned gifts, they're really the substantial. And the university, all of the gifts in the history of the university, all of the naming of the schools that we had, the Purdue family, the Henson family, you know, the Grarys and the Seidel's and the Fultons, there was a combination of a cash gift and planned gifts. And so that's really what helped name those schools.
Right.
And so a lot of the major gifts that we've gotten over the last 20 years have been from planned giving, like Mr. Laws.
Right. So what do you think is the overall impact of planned giving gifts like Mr. Laws?
You know, when you're working with donors who have substantial estates, it's just the impact, the broader scope of what those gifts can do, whether it is setting up scholarships, whether it's naming a building, whether it's endowing a professorship or a programmatic endowment, those gifts can really just have a bigger impact because of the size of them.
Can I give to any program?
You can. I always say this to people. The beauty of the university is there's something for everyone. And so the way the foundation is set up as a mechanism, we can set up endowments and support for any entity on campus. And so if a donor is interested in a planned gift and they say, I want to support the athletic department. Now, it couldn't be scholarships because we're a Division III program, but they
Right.
could set up, for example, Madeline Purdue, when she passed away, the Purdue family, she loved women's basketball. And so through her estate, she set up a gift that supported the women's basketball program.
Pick your love.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
can
yeah.
give to any
Yeah.
specific
Donors have a passion for
program
certain
or
things.
professorship.
Yep. So something that might have had an impact on them if they were an alum or if they were in the community and they really, enjoyed something about the university. The sky's the limit. Like I said, we have something for everyone. Our students, there's a student organization for almost every entity. The donors have a lot of choices.
Are there any incentives for setting up a planned gift?
Yeah, so we certainly want to recognize people. Most people tell us ahead of time, hey, I've left you something in my estate. We work with them. We created the Holloway Society maybe 3 or 4 years ago, named after, obviously, President Holloway, the very first president of Salisbury University, and Holloway Hall bearing his name. A gift society for those people who have left something to Salisbury University in their estate plan. So once a year, those folks will get together, they'll have a lunch with the president, sort of hang out with each other and just talk and sort of be recognized as those who are leaving a legacy for the future of the university.
Actually-
and their names go on a little plate inside Holloway Hall as members of the Holloway Society.
Right. I know you make those people feel very special. Gail Whittison,
Yeah.
who represents Avery
Yep.
Hall,
Yep.
her grandfather,
Yep.
Attends that
Yep.
once a year, and she
Yep.
tells me how really nice of an
Yep.
event that is.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it just makes her think about her grandfather
Yeah.
and all that he did for this
And it's special.
community.
It's special for those folks and the family members of those individuals to have that foresight to think, this is what I want to do and this is how I want to support the university.
Now, what about people who are sitting there right now looking at us and saying, I want to give now. I
Yeah.
don't want to wait till I die.
Yeah, and we have a lot of folks. We have, over 4,000 people a year give some shape, form, or fashion to the university. You can contact any of us at the foundation. We have everything from memberships in the Maroon and Gold Club, which supports athletics, people, the cultural events, the symphony. We have alumni who support all of the different academic departments. Like I said, we have an annual fund program, which is really, people who give anywhere from $25 a year all the way up to $5,000 a year. Sometimes there are people who want to take advantage of providing securities. Maybe they have some stock that they've held on to for so long and they want to avoid the capital gains purposes. We can help them with exchange of securities. Sometimes people give us gifts of art. Sometimes they'll give us things that donations to the library, maybe it's collections. We can help donors out with really anything at any point.
Are there any special incentives for people who give now?
Yeah, so we have different clubs and incentives. It depends on what you give to. People who give $1,000 and higher right now, we have a President's Club,
Yes.
President's Society, and there's special little perks that come along with that. The great thing is, when you give to different departments too, like our biology department, they like to recognize donors. So members at certain gift levels are really stakeholders of the university. I mean, you're investing your precious resources in the university, so you believe in it. So we want to be partners. It's not so
Right.
much thank you for your gift and be on your way. It's you're part of this. You're part of the fabric of
Yeah, and
what's
I
happening
think that's
here
a
at the
very
university.
special privilege,
Yeah.
incentive enough,
Yeah.
actually.
And we want everybody
All
to
the other things are perks.
Yeah,
but-
and we want everybody to feel proud about how the university has grown and the success that we're having. So,
Well, I think we're having a lot of success,
Yeah.
and a lot of that's due to you. So,
well, I love
thank
this
you.
place. I'm an alum.
I know you do.
I have a lot of passion for the university. I'm really excited about Dr. White and his new tenure.
I'm very anxious to meet him.
Yeah.
I've heard nothing but good things, so I guess I get to meet him at a President's
Yes,
Club event
yes,
coming up.
that's right.
I'm
That's
looking
right.
forward to that.
Yep.
Thank you, Jason, for being
Thank-
with us today.
thank you,
Appreciate it
Susan.
so much. I'd like to thank my guests, SU supporter Vic Laws and Jason Curtin, Vice President of Advancement and External Affairs and Executive Director of the SU Foundation. I'm Susan Purnell, and this has been Salisbury University on the Air. Thank you for watching.